Many NBA insiders are proposing the idea of Paul George going to the New York Knicks this offseason, and we are going to break this down. So what's up, guys? Welcome back to Knicks Digest. It's Chris here, and let's just jump into some offseason content because unfortunately, this season ended. So, according to Evan Sidery, an insider over at Forbes, he said that Paul George is an underrated target to potentially monitor for the New York Knicks, as last summer the Knicks were interested in Paul George leading up to the 2023 NBA draft, where the Knicks ended up doing nothing and drafting nobody. And he does mention that if George decided to go for the opt-in and trade route, the Knicks can get an almost identical salary match utilizing Julius Randle and Bojan Bogdanovic in a trade that would probably only require one first-round pick, and that George is also represented by CAA, who obviously Leon Rose runs. But let me just say something here about Paul George and the New York Knicks. The Knicks can work a trade out that wouldn't involve Julius Randle, and I honestly think that would be the more likely scenario here. Paul George and Julius Randle are good friends. This is nothing new. You can tell on Paul George's podcast with Randle on it. The two are clearly close. They hang out a lot. They are genuinely friends, even though they've never been teammates. They've just been around NBA circles long enough to build a relationship. I think that if Paul George were to come to the New York Knicks, he would say that he does not want to be traded for Randle and that he would want to play with Julius Randle, which also works out for the Knicks. Because why would we trade Julius Randle, who's going to be 30 next season, for Paul George, who's going to be 35 next season and averages less points and assists and shoots a lower percentage from the field? I don't think that makes much sense. However, if you want to pair Paul George with Brunson, with Julius Randle, with the rest of the team and move DiVincenzo into a super six-man role, I think that would be a stacked-up roster that could easily win the NBA Finals next season. Now, this depends on what the Knicks could trade for Paul George, and we're going to get into a trade package a little bit later in the video, so stay tuned for that. But there's just been so much noise from Bleacher Report, from a ton of different sources about Paul George and the Knicks, and really just a bunch of Knicks stuff. And as you can see right here, with the absence of an extension, there's a good chance that Paul George could potentially be leaving the Los Angeles Clippers this summer, and Philadelphia is the biggest threat to take Paul George. Everyone knows that. It makes sense. They have cap space. They have two other stars in Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, and as a rival, kind of just makes them the second best team in the East over the Knicks potentially. But the Knicks work also, and as it's put here, they are the better fit in Bleacher Report's opinion. I believe that was a Dan Favale article, or Favale. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm not a pronunciator. I don't know if that's a thing. But look, I just really think that the Knicks, they could go for Paul George. I'm not going to be like, no, don't do it. You only have so many years of this cap flexibility and where these draft picks can lead to something, so you might as well strike while the iron's hot, get a bit of a better team. I would be fine with Paul George. He'd be like a, I don't know, sort of a third option. Him and Randle would kind of take turns as the second and third options. I think it would fit both their games. I think Paul George gets to focus more on defense on the Knicks than on offense, which is good for his game and probably good for his health. And he's a fan of Tom Thibodeau. He's said that before applying with USA Basketball and being coached under Tibbs during that, because Tibbs has worked with USA Basketball in the past. There's a rapport there. He's a CAA client, like Randle, like Brunson. I could see a world where this happens. I don't think it's going to, but it would make some sense for the New York Knicks. I'd actually be very interested, and it, to me, would depend on what the trade package is, but I think if you're looking at the Clippers, they're going nowhere fast. James Harden is not the same player that he once was. Same goes for Russell Westbrook. Kawhi Leonard looks really good when he plays basketball once every 4 years, but with the fact of the matter being that Kawhi will play in the playoffs once every presidential term, despite the fact that his team is making the playoffs every year. Are you really going to trust that if you're Paul George? You're 34, you don't have a championship, the Clippers certainly aren't getting you one. You just lost in the first round again. Where are you going from here? You might as well leave. Like, even if it's not to the Knicks, he might as well leave. He should go to the 76ers or the Knicks. I think those are the two options that people should look at as a free agent. If you're younger, you can look at the Orlando Magic, but I kind of think the Magic are going to go ahead and sign either like Buddy Hield or Malik Monk or something like that, just to add a shooter into that lineup. I don't think they're going to come away with Klay Thompson this free agency. I don't think they're going to get Emmanuel quickly because the Raptors are going to match that deal. So that kind of leaves The Knicks and the 76ers, the teams you could go to. You could work out a sign and trade with the Knicks. Paul George could opt in and request a trade to the New York Knicks in the process. And if one of those were to happen, it means the Knicks have all the leverage. It means the Clippers lose leverage and the Knicks can give a trade that some might not perceive as fair, which is huge. And the Clippers already were open to trading him, according to Sam Amick and Law Murray of The Athletic. And the quote is essentially saying that George knows what his situation is. No one else really is going to, but the Clippers have a strong willingness to discuss him in a few trade scenarios. And it kind of makes you think, well, he used to be sort of untouchable, and now he's not. I'm clearly not reading this word for word, because last time I tried to read something on here, I botched it like I'm in 6th grade. But basically, what it's saying is Paul George leaving the Clippers can become way more likely. And if you look at his stats, he's putting up solid numbers for someone in the latter half of their career. Still putting up 22.5 points per game with 5 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 41% from 3 and 47% from the field. He's a solid player, don't get me wrong, but I just don't know how the Knicks would go about getting him. You have to basically get him on a 1+1 deal, or basically trying to get him through some sort of trade after he opts in. And I feel like Paul George is going to go for one final big contract. Like, if I'm Paul George, I'm going to take the fact that I just had a solid enough season to get paid way too much money, despite the fact that I'm 35 and have not won anything in my career, and kind of just take it from there. And that's exactly what he should do, because he's a solid player, and someone's going to give him that money. Probably Philadelphia, probably LA. I don't know if the Knicks would. Knicks have a lot of guys to pay. Josh Hart's going to be due in a few years. Same year as DiVincenzo, who's going to get a massive upgrade. They got to pay Hartenstein this summer. They got to pay OG Anunoby this summer. They got to pay Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson in the next year. I just don't know if they're going to go for Paul George. However, they are going to go for some sort of a trade. Now, if you want to trade Randle for Paul George, I think that's real stupid and doesn't do anything good for the Knicks. And I don't think they're going to do it for that reason, because the Knicks are smart and they know that. But there is another option. You can trade Bojan Bogdanovic, Mitchell Robinson, Diakite, 2 first-rounders, and use that Obi Toppin trade exception to land Paul George. Now, I think this makes the Knicks a better team. It also puts you completely in win-now mode. But this is also under the impression that Paul George opts into his deal. Now, you give a crazy package that gives you a very, very good center. It gives you Bogdanovic you could maybe flip for a few second-round picks. You get 2 first-rounders out of this. It's a great deal if you're the Clippers. You're not going to get much better than this in trade form. You might as well get something for Paul George instead of just losing him outright to Philly. I think this seems like a good idea for at least the Clippers, and I could see why the Knicks would want to do this. I mean, I'm interested in it. If it doesn't work, yeah, you just lost out on Mitchell Robinson and 2 firsts, but you still have enough assets to still turn around and make a different trade. You could just, I don't know, give Paul George an extension and flip him a year later if it doesn't work or something like that. And if you get Paul George, once his contract runs out, you get money that opens up. You can repay your players. You still have picks to get stars. It can kind of continually go, and you won't really lose that much in the process for Paul George, which I think could work. And also, I think that a starting lineup of Jalen Brunson, Paul George, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Isaiah Hartenstein, with some low-money backup center, whether it's Precious or someone else, or even Jericho Sims, along with DiVincenzo, Josh Hart on the bench. You might have to give Deuce in that trade. But with DiVincenzo and Josh Hart on the bench, along with a center to be named later, and probably still Deuce McBride, I mean, that team is a finals contender. That might be a finals favorite. So I think the Knicks should go for it. If you have to give up Julius, back out. But it is an interesting idea. I want to know what you guys think in the comments. We are going to be doing free agency videos like there's no tomorrow, because I'm really bummed out that we're not going to get to see the Knicks play till October. Summer League does not count. I'll obviously be watching, but it's not as fun, dude. But such is life. As Tibbs said, 29 teams leave unhappy. 1 team leaves happy. You just got to end the season on a win, and at one point, the New York Knicks will do that. They will win the final game of their season, a.k.a. win the NBA Finals. But guys, like this video, subscribe to Knicks Digest. We're planning on having an awesome summer. We're going to do some new things. We're going to do some live streams. We're going to do some fun, silly stuff with the channel. We're going to get some collaborations in here. I'm going to try to start doing some interviews from some other talking heads in the Knicks spaces. It's going to be a fun time, guys. You don't want to miss out. It's good vibes only. Vibes are staying immaculate in New York. let's have a home run of a free agency. And also, let's just root for the Minnesota Timberwolves to win, because screw the Mavs fans. I don't like the Celtics, and the Pacers can't win because they suck. They shouldn't even be there. So, guys, have a great day, and go Knicks.